All right, now I'm going to show you how to make doors, signs, and windows. Here we go. To make a door, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one of my vertical lines. My vertical lines need to be parallel. So I'm going to line up with my ruler one of my vertical lines. I'm using the red printed lines on my ruler as I showed you in the first video to help me keep it parallel. My doors, depending on the size of the buildings, are approximately half an inch to an inch in height. It just depends on the side of the building. I make them so they look like they are an appropriate size for the building. So I make the first vertical line. Then I'm going to keep it parallel to the bottom of my building, and I'm going to make the top of my door. I make double doors because this is a city and there are lots of people going in and out. Now I'm going to, again, line it up, keep it parallel, and make my second vertical line. So I have a rectangle on the front of my building. I call this the front, even if I don't necessarily make it the front. And this is the side, okay? So at the front of my building, it looks just like a traditional door would. Like I said, I made a double door, so I'm going to divide it in half. I always eyeball and get it approximately in half. Sometimes I do really good. Sometimes I have to erase and fix it. You could also measure and divide it by 2 and find out where that is. To make a door on the side, I need to start with the center vertical line. I have 1, 2, 3 main vertical lines to my building. I'm going to go to the center vertical line. I'm going to then slide my ruler over just like I did on the front. Line it up with one of those red printed lines. Again, I'm going to make my door approximately the same size that I made it on the front. Start with my vertical line. Now, from the top of that vertical line, I need to angle it to the vanishing point. I realize you cannot see my vanishing point. It is over here. I promise you, I am lining up with it. If I slide this down a little bit, you can see it's right there. I'm going to push this so I can draw a little easier. And I'm going to go across for the top of my door. And again, another vertical parallel line. If I do not use vertical parallel lines, my door is going to look weird. My door already kind of looks weird there on the side, but if I my door already kind of looks weird. Sorry, I accidentally stopped. But if I don't use vertical parallel lines, it really doesn't look right. So again, I'm going to divide the door in half. Ta-da! I got 2 doors. There's doors, front and side. All right. Now, signs. Signs can technically go anywhere on a building. I have a tendency to put them right above the door. Sometimes I put them at the top of my building. Sometimes I do both, but technically they can go anywhere. For ease of demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you them above the door because it's easier. All right, so here we go. Well, actually, it's not easier. It just makes more logical sense because I'm starting at the bottom and working my way to the top of the building. So I'm going to line one of my red printed lines up at the side of my building. Signs, I usually give a little bit of space between the top of the door and the sign. I'm going to make my sign about half an inch tall. Here I do measure because it makes my life easier. Again, parallel to the bottom of the door, or the building, sorry, parallel to the bottom of the building. And I'm going to draw my line over, ending approximately the same distance from the opposite side. I'm going to make this into a rectangle using my ruler. Make whichever line is logically next in your mind that you need to make the rectangle. It really doesn't matter which order you do them in. I would highly recommend starting with the vertical line first and then the horizontal line because it makes it easier. All right, so now I have the rectangle. I'm going to make it into a sign. I'm going to add the famous word of name just as a placeholder. All right, that's the name. That's where that would go. I wrote name on this so that way when you're looking at this, you can be reminded, oh, yeah, that's my sign, whatever it would be. When I'm actually doing this for myself, I don't, unless I know for sure what the name of the building is going to be, I don't write anything in it because I know that's my sign. Now, what if I want to make a sign on the side? Again, center vertical line. Slide the ruler over a little bit. When I say a little bit, I'm moving it over one red printed line on my ruler. I'm going to keep my sign the same size. I'm going to line up from the bottom of this line with my vanishing point, and I realized I turned my paper. Sorry, guys. I'm going to line up with the bottom, zoom across. I'm going to line up with the top with the vanishing point, zoom across. Then I'm going to make my vertical parallel line down to connect the two. All right, so now I have my other sign. Writing words in perspective is challenging. Just do the best you can if you decide to do that. It just takes practice. All right, so there's signs. So we got doors, we got signs. Now let's talk about windows. I'm going to show you two different types of windows. I normally would not put both of them on the same building, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put both of them. So I'm going to line my ruler up again with the side of my building. One of the red printed lines on top of my pencil line. I make my windows somewhere between 1/2 inch and 1 inch, depending upon the size of my building. For the group together windows, I'm going to draw another big rectangle, just like I did for my sign. So I could essentially turn that sign into into windows if I really wanted to, or felt that I needed to. So same process that I just did on the front of my building. Okay, so there's my rectangle. How do I make that window? That's an awful big window. I will eyeball, decide how many windows I want. I'm keeping it vertically parallel, and I will use vertical lines to divide my window. I think I'm going to make a bigger center window and two smaller windows on either side. Okay, there, I got windows. Obviously, I need more windows as I didn't fill up my building. Let's look at the side. Center line, just as before, slide it over just a little. Again, my ruler, the red printed line, is on top of my pencil line. Measuring the windows, keeping them the same, saves me time. Again, the bottom over to the edge, not completely the edge. Top, vanishing point, over again. Okay, now I have like a long exaggerated C. Now I'm going to connect with a vertical parallel line my rectangle. Again, I'm going to divide my window. I eyeball it. You could certainly do some math and come up with some nice, very evenly divided windows. You do it how you need to. There's one type of window. I said I was going to show you two. Remember, normally I would not intermix these two types of windows on the same paper, or not on the same paper, excuse me, on the same building. But to save us time, sorry, the video cut out. To save us time, we're going to put two different types of windows on the same building. Usually I would not do that. So I'm going to line up. I'm going to give some space between my windows. Here's another place where I would measure. I'm going to make individual windows this time, but I will measure the distance between my rows of windows because then I know how far apart they are and it looks more even. Individual windows, I tend to make slightly bigger. I'm going to make these almost 1 inch. It also depends on the size of building. Now I'm going to line it up horizontally with other horizontal lines on my building to help me keep it parallel. And I'm going to draw a broken or a dashed line across my building. Okay? Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add in my vertical lines, keeping them parallel and making the vertical parts of my windows. Now I have like two big letter U's, square letter U's, but letter U's. Now I'm going to, again, keeping my lines parallel horizontally, I'm going to connect the top of the windows. By doing this way, my windows are in line without me having to try very hard. Individual windows on the sides can be more challenging, but this is how we do this. Center line, slide the ruler over, some space between the window and the last row of windows. I like to keep that space even. All right, vertical line, bottom of that vertical line, line it up with the vanishing point. Draw your broken or dashed line. Then we're going to line up vertically, keep it parallel, and we're going to make the other vertical parts of our windows. It is important that you keep them parallel. Now this last window, I could have made it slightly longer over there, but that's okay. Now, the first vertical line, the one that I drew first, is the one that I need to line up with my vanishing point. I need to line up with that one so I get the right angle. So now I'm going to go like this and this. They're a little on the short side, which is what makes these vertical lines, which is what makes these more difficult, more challenging. Line them up parallel, fill in the little missing spots. Sometimes I make them too long. This time I made them too short. So that is how you make doors, windows, and signs in one-point perspective.